Ah, deckball. One of the pleasures of being at sea. Much preferred to watch than play.
You see that man over there with his knuckles? Aim for him, he is shit. Ah! Oh shit, what is this? I don't know what is going on!
By the virtues, it's real!
Oh my god! It's huge!
It's going to swallow us whole! Hold on! The good news is, we're alive. The bad news is, I'm not sure what side of the digestive tract we're on.
Oh, it's very dark in here. I do not know how it's going. You'd think there would be at least some light. I mean, God, it's very dark.
Well, it looks like we got a while one way or another. So, while we wait, why don't we continue with the news of love?
Welcome to another episode of the LARP News Podcast. Something a little bit special for you today. I have travelled up north and met up with a couple of gentlemen who are involved with Profound Decisions, the guys that run Empire, the LARP that we actually attend. So if you'd like to introduce yourselves and tell us what you do.
Yeah, hi, I'm Matt Pennington. I am sort of the front man for Empire. I am part of the game team that makes the big decisions about the game. I also effectively run the business. And then it's my job to... The buck stops with me, basically.
I'm Graeme Jamieson. But does not stop with me. I am head of rules, and I am also a member of the game team with Matt, Andy, and Claire.
And how much LARP experience would you say you have combined in years?
I have 19 years of experience.
I always like to say to people I only started last week. It always feels that way. I started when I was 26 years ago. So
26 years ago?
Yes, I've been LARPing 26 years ago, but it feels like yesterday.
So
Right.
45 years combined.
I mean, that's a fair old innings right there.
Yes.
I didn't run my first LARP till the year 2000.
When did LARP? I don't know nothing about the history of LARP. Like, was there a flashpoint where people started dressing up and applying rules and stuff, or is this like
Back in days of yore.
was it an extension of D&D basically? Is how I would
My
imagine it to be.
understanding, I wasn't there at the start. My understanding is it started probably as much as 10 years before I did, but I think basically a big group of people who'd been playing tabletop games figured out that they could just do this live and just started writing rules, and I think the first weapons they made were foam and I'm going to say gaffer, but they had dye on them, so I don't know if they were.
I heard Gaffer.
Yeah, gaffer. So, but basically they had access to a phenomenal site, Pennington Castle, which is it's not a real castle, but it's a folly. So it looks like a castle. It's built as a castle. It's not it's a fake castle. It's actually so they had this amazing site, and that I think was the birthplace pretty much of live role playing in this country.
So would that be like the 80s?
Yes, I'm pretty sure there's a famous bit where Blue Peter went down and did a 10 minutes. You can look up on YouTube. Yeah, I think it's the 80s that it started.
Right, and so, because me as someone that has only really even thought about LARP and gone to LARP in the last, say, 2 years, for example, I've been aware of it kind of rumbling around in the background. It's like I saw Darkon years ago. I saw there's a few pop references like in TV shows and things like that. Now it seems to be, I don't know whether I'm more aware of it, but it seems to be growing larger, and there seems to be more LARPs popping up around the place. Do you think there's a cultural reason for that happening now, or...?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I used to quote a date. For me, firstly, the hobby is simply less insular than it was. It's a little... We're still very guarded, because we still remember the 80s and 90s when everybody just... our kit standards were pretty poor back then. So the hobby looked naff, and people looked at it and thought, that looked weird. And they'd look at us and think, it looks weird, you're weird, I don't want to have anything to do with it.
I think before seeing anything else, that was my feelings on what I expected to find at LARP,
But the Lord of the Rings films come out, the Harry Potter books come out, World of Warcraft becomes massive. You know, basically, role-playing as a concept simply becomes a widely known about and understood phenomena today in a way that it simply wasn't in the 90s.
Yeah, I would say, like, if you said what is an orc to someone nowadays, right, even on a really simple level, everybody knows what an orc is. It isn't like an obscure thing anymore. Everyone, even, like, I remember, I didn't really realise it because it was just some movie franchise at the time, but the Lord of the Rings franchise was like that generation's Star Wars, you know, like had that sort of effect on people. So it's kind of like that cultural zeitgeist starts to grow of that being a, you know, something that people like and what are interested in.
That came out not long after I started getting into LARP, so that was a big influence at the time. But even today, you see more and more things. Game of Thrones has done some fantastic work for mainstreaming the fantasy genre
in
recently.
fact, when I describe what Empire is to someone that doesn't really understand like the game setting, I use Game of Thrones a lot because it's mainly because of the reason magic exists, but it's not every day, right? Like it's not something that maybe you would see a dragon every day or some mythical beast, but that you live in that world, and some people might even consider them to be rumors or myths. Other people know they're real. You know, it's that kind of feel to it. You know.
Yeah, the anecdote I always tell in terms of that flip over point. Obviously, I've been doing this professionally for 16 years, and I used to dread the question you dread whenever you go somewhere socially. What do you do for a job? And I'd be like, I'm an event organizer. And I'd be like, oh, what sort of events? And you get that sinking feeling. So you start to explain it, and you could see the look on their face of like, I don't understand what you do. I'm going to back away because you sound strange and unfamiliar. And then about 7 or 8 years ago, I'm at a wedding. For no reason of any kind. It's nobody I know. It's a friend of a friend of a friend of the family. I've been roped in. I'm at this
You came for the free food, right?
Yeah. And my dad is taking me around, introducing me to various people, and introduces me to this 75-year-old woman. And then somehow this conversation starts of, what do you do for a living? And I'm like, oh, God, here we go again. So I explain what I do, and she's going, nodding away, going, yeah. And I'm like, this isn't the normal reaction. And after about 5 minutes of it, she goes, yeah, it's like that thing with Leroy Jenkins, isn't it?
What?
And I'm like, and she's like, yeah, I've watched my grandson playing World of Warcraft. Yeah.
That's funny.
And not only could she totally understand what I was talking about, she stayed and chatted to me about my job for 3/4 of an hour.
Yeah.
Just fascinated, interested. And I was like, wow, the difference, having gone through that sort of 10-year period of the way people see live role playing and the way and role playing and gaming,
even ones that don't necessarily look good, like even what's that movie Role Models? Like I know people use that as an example of like how it shouldn't be covered, but it's in this
Role Models was quite a big bit of a change, to be honest, in terms of LARP films. I've seen a lot of weird LARP films. There was a Norwegian one. Got very strange, and various other films that you look at in the past, and they deal with it much worse than Role Models. Role Models is cringy. Is it Owen Wilson or is someone?
Yeah, it's the guy with one of the Wilsons.
It's a comedy.
Yeah, it's of that era, so it's still mocking it. The geeky protagonist is unbelievably geeky.
Uber geek. His people that they meet while LARPing are the geekiest oddballs ever, right?
But on the other hand, it does treat it a bit nicer, a bit better than various other things.
Do you know what? I thought, because they dress up as Kiss at the end, right? Spoilers, by the way, sorry. They dress up as Kiss at the end and have this big financial... And I couldn't help but think, I watched it again fairly recently, I was going like, do you know what? They're just wearing shit they're comfortable with. But they're still LARPing, they're still trying to get into... And I was like, that's actually a really... It's subtle, but like you said, it is a slight change in like the attitude towards what it is.
And it's crept into other things as well. There's at least one Supernatural episode where they hit it up as well, and again, it's dealt with in a much better way than it was in. If you looked at something from, who was it? It was one of the comedians, bald guy.
Dara O'Brien.
Did Tough Gig and went on a LARP thing, and that I don't think went down terribly well. But again, was still.
I thought it was very positive. If you look at it, he is at the end of it. He's doing a gig to an audience of LARPers, and you know, there's some great jokes in there that are funny, and the LARPers are laughing. And
Yeah.
He's mocking the hobby, but he's mocking the hobby for LARPers,
Yeah.
not at LARPers. And that is the difference.
When I first went on my first event, I was so worried. Like that moment when I was first going to step outside the tent, and like I was worried that like everyone's just going to turn around and be like, "What is he?
Yeah.
Why did you dress in that? Like that is ridiculous. You know what I mean? You look ridiculous, and I'll feel
Yeah.
stupid." Like that initial kind of like moment, I was worried about it. Now I'm finding loads of stuff about LARP funny. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
there's lots of stuff like, and they're in game and they're kind of meta to the game, but there's lots of humor in it, and I kind of find it funny now anyway. You know, like it's especially when we're all sat around trying to do our makeup. Like that's a really funny scene of a bunch of dudes putting on makeup that they've never done before and really messing it up, but trying their best to do this thing that they love. You know, so yeah. How did PD come to life? You know.
So
Were you? Was there any financial, like you were doing it as a hobby, right?
Yeah.
First off, and then was PD a hobby or was that a business?
No, basically I was part of a group of people who ran a game purely for a hobby, and we had a very dogmatic, clear cut that we would never take a penny out of the business, out of the company that was the group that was running it. That was Amiga LRP running a game called Phoenix. We were very dogmatic. We wouldn't take any money out of it. It was just non-professional, to the point I wouldn't even take a T-shirt because I was like, principles are principles. I was young and naive.
For context, Matt is literally wearing an Omega LRP T-shirt as we speak.
Yeah,
Oh
I
my
sold
The sweet irony. Oh my goodness.
So I got given this
Oh,
when they
wow.
shut it all down.
What is it? What's that Batman thing where you say you have to die a hero or eventually become like the person that steals LARP T-shirts?
T-shirts. And it just got bigger and bigger and bigger and more work. And I just realised that I could either give up my hobby or I could give up my job.
Mm-hmm.
It was one of the two. And so we brought that game to an end, and I gave up my job and said, right, I'm going to start again, but I'm going to start it within the context of a business doing it commercially. And we were really nervous at first. I was really nervous about, how people would react to that. Sometimes when people run LARP commercially, they're a little bit embarrassed about, are they going to be honest about it? Because the bedrock of the hobby is still non-professional. It's still, events being run all the time by the hobby, for the hobby. And commercial LARP doesn't always have the best reputation. So we kind of took the tagline of professional live role-playing, because I was just determined to be absolutely upfront. This is professional, this is commercial, I am getting paid. And I just, so we set it up 15 years ago. To try and, so we set it up 15 years ago to try and, to just get a clean break and be like, right, this is it, this is the new stuff, this is.
Yeah, it must have been a fairly, because obviously I'm assuming you had a fair amount of experience obviously doing this kind of professionally, but then to actually have money riding on this thing and to have that kind of context of those players, if they don't enjoy the game, it's not that they just, I wasted my time, it's literally like a financial incentive. That must have been a lot of pressure, right?
I don't really do pressure. I didn't. I don't think I gave it a moment's thought.
Nice.
I'm quite a confident person. I think generally, if you're going to give up your job and start this as a business, you're probably pretty confident. Generally my problem in life is I'm overconfident. I overestimate my chances of success, not underestimate. So I never batted an eyelid. I was just dead certain I was going to produce a game and people would come and it would be a success.
So what was your first game as PD then?
First game we ran was called Maelstrom, which we ran for 9 years, which was a colonial setting, but not colonising America, but taking that theme, but colonising a strange new magical world. And it had native races of snake people and bug people, myrmidons.
Now would they be like the monsters or barbarians as they are in Empire, or are they?
They would be more like the Imperial Orcs. They were strange, unusual, different, but they were also played by players. So it was a very magical world. You just see crazy things walking around.
How long did you run that for?
9 years.
9 years. So that wasn't a short amount of time. So what made you end it?
It was done.
It was done.
Yeah, two or three factors. One is it had an escalating mechanism where the players were getting more powerful all the time, and they were discovering more and more about the world. It was very much a game of discovery and of finding things out and of revealing secrets and of gaining knowledge. It, like a computer game, it had a skill tree that opened up as players gained more and more skills.
Right.
And after 9 years, we'd thrown the kitchen sink.
Most of the skill trees had been fully expanded. Some of the top end groups had some top tier or near top tier skills.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the key points about it was that players were nuclear powered compared to starting players.
Yeah.
A starting character would walk in and would not be able to compete anywhere near on the same level.
And was there a player-on-player type combat system involved?
Oh yes.
Right. So you're kind of being
Yeah.
thrown in with the big boys when you're just
Yeah.
starting out.
It's a bit like...
Players could be things like necromancers and demons and demonologists.
Right.
So at which point there were some players who were up to some fairly naughty things. The bugs were laying their eggs in the corpses of other players to gain their skills or whatever they were doing.
Wow. Okay.
It was a very in-depth
That's
game.
graphic. I mean, I'd love to see someone RP that, like squatting over someone.
Crucially for me, we got to a point where I was no longer convinced it was the best game I could run.
Yeah.
And that for me is always my tipping point. When I look at it and think, I can imagine a much better game than this that I could be running. That to me, the moment I hit that point, my clock starts ticking.
And like how many people got attending it?
The biggest game we ran had 1,016 people.
Okay, so
But really,
1,000 people, right? 900-ish? No.
that was a one-off. We never hit that again. I think it's better to talk in terms of 800.
Okay, but you have to then turn to 800 people who are invested for 9 years in this world, and I'm assuming some people get pretty hard out into that, right?
Yep.
Like, and get tattoos and all sorts of craziness, right?
Yep.
And then you turn around and say, it's coming to an end. How does that... Do you just write an email and then like run for a bunker or something? How does that work?
So we've done it three times now that we've brought a big game to an end. So the Omega, that very first game I ever ran, basically there was a plot. We didn't tell the players a thing, and then on the Sunday morning of the event, the refs went round and they just had a list, and if your name was on the list, you got handed a piece of paper that said, your character goes berserk and starts attacking other people. When you stop attacking them, you die. And we handed those cards out to 2/3 of the characters on the site. And with
This
no
was the
warning.
result of plot that had been going on throughout the weekend, I'm told.
Well, that was with no warning of any kind. So that was pretty dramatic. And there was a kind of quite apocalyptic end in a sort of last 24 hours later end. And then we got everyone together and explained what I'd just, kind of put it all together.
Now you're all dead.
Now you're all dead. That's the end of the game. With Maelstrom, we let everybody know. We just took a different approach. We said, in a year, we've got 1 year left now. This is the last year. If you've got any special things you've been saving, you've got a year.
God, that's a really interesting. Like, if you went to me now, Empire's got a year to go. That might change my entire attitude towards how I play the game.
Things went weird. Maelstrom had a currency. In fact, it had 4 currencies.
Obviously,
4
right?
and a half. None of which were on base 10. And all of which were on their own different base. But the value of those currencies went through the floor. But the value of consumables went through the roof. So yeah, the economy did some strange backflips.
Well, imagine if you actually said to everyone in the real world now, right, there's an asteroid coming towards us.
Yeah.
I mean, would you really care about your job?
No.
Well, you guys might, right? Like,
Yeah.
I certainly wouldn't care about my job. Like,
Exactly. Not so many people would be so keen to roll in at 9 o'clock.
No.
So we gave everyone about a year's warning. I don't know why we did, but we did, and that's how we did that.
It was to manage expectations. It was also to an extent to advertise that there was a new game coming.
I think we'd also realised we couldn't keep it quiet. When we finished Omega, I wasn't certain what I was going to do. I was pretty confident I was going to start again commercially. But also, I knew that I had 6 months. I was like, I've got 6 months before Easter. I can write a game in 6 months. Pish. And we did. We wrote a game in about 4.5, 5 months, launched it and released it. And I was like, yeah, great. We spent 3 years developing Empire. And it was pretty intense in the last year. And we knew that by the time we started to bring in a team of 20 writers, we weren't going to be able to keep that quiet.
Yeah.
And I didn't want it to leak. I wanted it to be, because then you're out of control of the narrative.
Well, that's really interesting that's even, I haven't even considered that to be so like you're a victim of the internet like anyone else is nowadays, right?
Absolutely.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
And this was 7 years ago now.
Yeah.
6 years. 6 years.
6
Just
years
over
ago.
6 years ago, we ended Maelstrom.
Yeah.
Okay. So then, how long has Empire been running
6
for?
years.
6 years. Okay, so I'm very late to the party then, basically. But
You say that. We're not.
do you know what?
yet.
I certainly don't feel late to the party when I show up there. Like,
The game's been written very differently, so you don't get anything like the same discrepancy of power between characters and established characters.
Diminishing returns is baked in. That was a
Yeah.
key lesson out of Maelstrom.
So as you gain more XP, everything just becomes more and more expensive. But also, the whole structure of the game is just totally different.
I think you said. By the way, I should say. Listen to the Empire podcast. It's they made one. And when did you make it? It was a couple of years ago now, I think. It's 5 or 6 episodes. They really go into a whole bunch of stuff that's very, very interesting, which is probably better communicated through them than us right now. So highly recommend, go and listen to it, especially if you're a new player. There's an excellent new player guide one on there, which does a fantastic job. So listen to that. But yeah, sorry.
No, it's all right. Yeah, so, I genuinely believe you could just roll into Empire tomorrow. And I've seen, groups, turn up and make a big splash just from day one.
Yeah.
It's about the attitude and the way you approach the game.
Particularly a good group of friends can just come in and properly affect the game.
We're growing. Like when we first went to our first event, there was 3 of us. And
Right.
now, last event there was 4 of us, and now we could be 6 next time,
Yeah.
7 next time, right? Like, and it's
Yeah.
growing. And these people are like, you talk to them about it, and you say, yeah, I want to go LARPing, blah, 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 and then they say, oh, I've bought a tent, or oh, I've bought like a 200 quid set of armor, and you're like, wow, you really are into this, like you're definitely up for it. So, and already with 4 of us when we went last time was like, we felt a lot more. I don't know, like we could flex more weight on certain things if we needed to, like.
And you're also in one of the largest nations in the game, whereas you can imagine how much impact you would have in a smaller nation.
Urizen, right?
Orcs,
Brass Coast.
Yeah.
Marches even.
Varushka.
Yeah. Let's talk. Okay, this might be. This is basically. I didn't write anything down before coming here, so this is basically my brain. I'm picking these guys' brain on my questions, so it might be rambling, a bit vague sometimes, but bear with us, all right? So, yeah, the nations.
Yes.
Right. So when I first went, I was like, the reason why we went to Navarre was extremely loose. Like, it really wasn't that much of we didn't give too much thought about it, and it was kind of like, yeah, they're the ones, and we kind of had some misgivings about some aspects of them. We really liked other aspects to them, and we went along.
Yep.
Most of those were way off the mark for how actually Navarre actually played, to be honest. We were surprised about a lot of it, But it was the second event I went to, E3, I started to look at other nations in a whole different way. I kind of saw them as arbitrary when I was first getting my thing and like picking one. But now I've been going a little while, they really have this... that they're defined, and like it's weird how personality types seem to gravitate towards those nations. So your Eurazens are kind of a little standoffish, or at least that's how they RP it. And then you have these like big belly laugh Farushkans, and like I don't know. It's when
there's a psyche to each of the nations. There's a kind of
I don't know.
And a chunk of that is playing a larger than life version of the character you can think of.
Would you say how much of that is like the person coming to the LARP, or how much do you reckon is that the LARP affecting behaviour? Because it feels a bit to and fro sometimes with certain people,
I think it's kind of hard to say.
People will play characters that are in their wheelhouse.
Yeah.
I'm never going to play a Brass Coaster, but I would cheerfully play an Urzeni, no problem. But I could equally do Dawn, League, a few other nations.
Yeah, I think that'd be. It's interesting.
So it just depends what you're happy with.
Like if we were talking about if we were gonna do another nation, what would it be? A lot of us pick different things. Like my friend Ian, he's like, he really likes Urizen, and I have no interest in Urizen whatsoever. Like if you went to me, you get to play Empire, but you only get to be Urizen, I'll be like, man, really? Like I like playing like like gregarious type characters, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't really fit into that thing. But when I was RPing with players from the Eurozen, it was it was just great because it really they felt defined as Eurozeni, you know.
Yes.
What do you say, like, because Wintermark seems to be a lot more homogenous than maybe some of the other nations. Do they have specific personality traits as part of them? And
I think they do. Yeah, I mean, I think they do. I think the difference perhaps with Wintermark is that there's 3 different tribes in Wintermark. The Suak, the Suak are very different to the Steiner, are very different to the Caladesi. And I think because of that, whereas in, there isn't 3 different types of Navarre.
no.
And so I think that is easy to read from the outside.
See, I didn't even realise there were 3 of these tribes, right?
Yeah.
That's
So
really
if you just see
interesting.
Wintermark, you'll be like, well, it doesn't seem that much. You seem totally different to him. Well, that's because he's playing one of the 3 different Wintermark archetypes.
Yeah, a whole bunch of photos got released today, actually. I was looking through them, and I did actually think that. So, yeah, maybe
Yes.
something I need to look into. It's funny how I kind of have brushed into different nations and kind of got a whole, like each weekend I go, there seems to be a special, and this nation this weekend is going to be Varushka or whatever, and then I have a lot of interaction with that nation for some reason. So
Right.
maybe I need to go and hang out in some Wintermark
Yeah.
bars more, maybe.
Talk to the Wark. But yeah, if you look at the Wintermark, the Suak are, they're the guys in the kind of pale cream furs, and they're basically kind of using ideas from kind of Lap and Inuit and kind of all of that. And I'm one of the weapons traders saying to me 6 years ago, like, you're making an Eskimo LARP. Are you nuts? He's like, you're nuts. No one will go to this. And then 2 months later, he came to me and was like, someone's just ordered a harpoon. And I was like,
That's amazing.
who was right?
So good.
But they're very different to the Steiner, who are kind of Anglo-Saxons, Saxons, not Anglo-Saxons, Saxons. They're very inspired by Lord of the Rings, the Rohirrim, draws on all of those kinds. So it's a completely different archetype that we've kind of drawn together in that nation.
I really enjoy watching them march into battle. That's one of my... Also, I've started to realise, like, sometimes when I'm running around, especially when I'm monster picking, I'm like, oh crap, it's these guys. Like, the Imperial Orcs, to fight them,
Yes.
it's something about, I don't know, they're intimidating and they work really well as a team. They're rough, you know what I mean? Like, if you're taking on them, they represent in my mind now a tough fight, They're not a pushover ever, whereas other nations might be a bit squishier sometimes, so...
There's a strong fighting mentality in the Orcs. I think one of the things that's interesting about any LARP game is that combination of, fighting comes down to some portion of your character's abilities, or how many hit points can you take, how many X, what can you do. It comes down to, ironically, particularly in LARP often, how expensive is your equipment? Do you have good armour? Do you have, have you got archers with a quiver full of arrows? Have you got good shields? So on and so forth. But fundamentally, it comes down to attitude. Yes, your ability to fight is important in a 1-on-1 or a 2-on-2 fight. But once there's 30 of you, it's discipline, it's psyche, it's
it's leadership as well, right?
Yeah.
Like, I've seen, like, there are real heroes in Empire, right? Like, I know who they are, right? You see them on the battlefield. They're leaders, they're brave, if they tell you to do something, then lots of other people are going to do it as well, and there's a certain, like, you have to RP that, right? You can't just say, I have a leadership stat, and therefore everyone stop running away. We're going to stand here and fight these more orcs than when we are, So.
Yeah. You can't just put an 18 in charisma.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's both a strength and a weakness of live role playing. Tabletop, you can be anything you can imagine you can be. In live role playing, you can be anything you can portray, and that's not the same thing. If you don't have a degree of charisma, then you're not going to be a battlefield leader. If you're not canny and shrewd and give the gift of the gab, you're probably not going to be the best trader in the field. There are things that you can do. There are lots of things in Empire you can do and enjoy the game, but periodically the game is going to come to you and say, do you the player have the abilities to pull this off, because it's you the player that are going to have to do this.
Well, this leads me on something that I've been thinking about recently, and it's kind of there was a couple of incidents that happened at my last event that made me kind of think about it. One was a Facebook post, and another one was a guy talking to a group of people, And he was talking. The guy that was talking to the group of people was I think it was something to do with the synod or the Senate. I can't remember which one it was, but he was basically telling them they should run for this election, right? And he was trying to tell them that he didn't do that as part of his normal job, and he felt like now he has. But I also felt by looking at the guy, he seemed like a guy that didn't necessarily immediately come naturally to him as a person, right? Where we all carry a lot of baggage and from experience going through our lives, right? And we may shut doors to things that maybe we didn't realise we can do. And one thing I found interesting about like just looking at sort of people doing LARP is that like Songs and Story Time is a great example, right? Where you get people that clearly aren't comfortable with necessarily performing and doing all that sort of stuff, but they'll stand up in a what feels like a very safe environment and give it a go, right? Yeah. And you don't get good at anything if you don't try it, right? So if you spend your whole life kind of being a bit awkward and not really having the opportunity to do that, I don't know. I don't know. Do you see that with your years of experience in LARP? Or?
I think so. I mean, Empire is unusual in some respects, which you should come back to. But I think there are whole swathes of areas of Empire where you can do stuff that you wouldn't. You look at Song and Story. If I was going to a commercial gig, I would expect a commercial quality of performance by the musical artist. When I'm at a live role-playing event, I will cut them a lot of slack. So it's a much more sympathetic audience. You only have to be so good for everyone to be really into the fact that and they don't look at you. My hunch, if I was at Song and Story and somebody gets up and performs and they're amazing, I'll be like, wow, it was amazing. But if they get up and they perform and they're just okay, I'm not going to be like, well, I've paid money for that. Yeah. I'm still going to be like, you're adding to my role-playing, awesome. But also, I'm mentally thinking, that could be me. That would be me. In a way that I wouldn't.
The empathy, right?
Empathy, yeah. Because you know that you could have made that character too. But so, it's not like performing, it's not quite as challenging, I think, as performing in the real world. There's a whole load of areas where you can go into them and do things in Empire, and it's much easier to fail. Now, weighed against that, there are some areas, like if you're in the military leadership or you're in the top echelons of the political leadership, where the game is a bit scarily aggressive. If you fail, there are 20 people on your case. Deeply unhappy.
Notably, the Marchers literally put someone in a gigantic straw man and burned them alive for their failures as a general.
That seems I actually really like the Marchers. They're one of I like the Marchers a lot. I like their accents. I like how kind of twee they are, but also they are pretty wicked awesome on the battlefield. It's they're pretty good, right?
So, but I think the point is, Empire is live role playing in general is a great environment to try things you've never tried before.
I've got a question for you, right? Yes. So I've named the podcast LARP, Live Action Roleplay, right? I've also heard LRP.
Yep.
What's the difference?
Opinion. Opinion is the difference.
Because there I was like, I better do some research on you, because if we're going to sit down, I want to be able to talk about something. So I watched your immersion one, and then you said LRP a lot, and I was going, oh man, I'm about to sit down with you and go through this stuff, and maybe I've just completely missed the mark on what I should have even called it.
There's no agreement anywhere. People, I am now going on fire somewhere. Someone is going to come and hunt me down. Hey ho, there's no agreement on the spelling. There's not even an agreement on the spelling between the game team. In that, I believe Matt is in favour of LRP.
Yeah.
I know Andy's in favour of LRP. I use LARP, and I'm not sure what Claire uses. So
I think I might just stop using it. I think that's
LARP is either one.
Yeah.
So stop spelling it.
Yeah,
is
stop
my
spelling
recommendation.
it. Just everything has to be done vocally. Yeah.
The hobby is broadly divided into 20% of the people who are convinced it is one and are unaware it could be the other. 20% of the people who are convinced it should be one and not the other, and the people who claim otherwise are the spawn of Satan. And 60% of people who are smart enough to realise it just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And no one really cares.
At one stage, the 10 Empire nation groups were split 60-40.
Yeah.
One was spelling versus the other.
I quite like it as a stupid argument for the hobby to have, because of all the arguments we could be having, arguing about whether there's an A in LARP or LARP is it's pretty anodyne. It's pretty mindless. It's pretty harmless. So.
It's a funny one, but I was like, oh man, Oh, by the way, that's also a very good video to watch. Matthew Pennington does a video on. It's. I think you're just about to launch Empire, aren't you? And it's a kind of like non-spoilery. You're trying to kind of stay on the message of what you were intending to do with the LARP, rather than actually saying exactly what you are doing with the LARP in in bold terms. And it's. I think it's entitled Immersion. I think it is.
Yeah. Deepening immersion.
Yeah, and it was funny. I don't think I think I tried to watch that before I went to LARP, right? And
right.
It's like, yeah, it's a lot when you haven't been, right?
Yes.
But having been, it's a lot more interesting to kind of get just kind of understand some of the the immersion aspects to it. Me and we always talk about how when we get back from an event, it takes about 2 or 3 days for your memory just to chunk through some of the memories. By the time that's done, it's cinematic, like it's been color corrected and given film grain, and all the extras have been moved out of the way, and the cars, and it's just us actually at Anvil being our characters and experiencing that world. It's funny how that happens.
I'd never even given a thought to the fact that someone could try and watch that video before they went to their first live role-playing game. That is me talking to a group of fairly experienced live role players, kind of as one organiser to a room of kind of fellow organisers and experienced players. And it was really meant to talk about, it's talking about themes in LARP and about where the hobby is heading and where we as a company might be trying to take what we do and so forth. You've made me realise it's a good idea that I should do one of those about, designed absolutely about, so you're new to LARP, what's it about, you know, but yeah, I wouldn't recommend anyone listen to that before live role playing.
No, it was a lot.
It's a bit heavy.
Yeah.
There's some laughs in it. It's meant to be.
It's funny though. Like now, there's a few people. There's YouTube videos about LARP, specifically Empire LARP. In fact, that seems to be a lot of what there is. There's some German channels out there, some English for the big German ones that are out there. But it definitely feels like that's kind of LARP's coming out of the shadows a bit in that, and kind of gaining a lot more popularity. And I mean, even I have kind of mixed feelings on it, despite running a podcast. The hypocrisy of someone running a podcast, but being like, oh, am I comfortable with all of this and everything else that goes along with it? But I think for me, it's a lot of people are doing it in a respectful way, and I find that a lot in Empire, especially with photos. People are takedown requests are all, there's no problems whatsoever, and there certainly isn't anybody being mean that I've seen. So.
Yeah, occasionally people say the wrong thing in a blog or something without meaning to, and somebody somewhere treats it like the end of the world. But generally, they're made by the hobby and they're for the hobby, and I think it's been amazing. To me, it's been a renaissance because it so certainly opened my eyes to the possibility in a way I just wasn't aware of previously. In a way, the whole social media revolution kind of passed me by. When I cut my teeth on, in my formative years, dial-up modems were a thing. I would go home, plug my computer into the phone socket, unplug the telephone, dial up, send some emails.
I still miss the dial-up tone though. My poor parents, when they got I think I ran up a phone bill that was just astronomical, and
we've all done.
They were very angry about it. So
yeah. See, my kids will never know the joy of running up huge internet dial-up phone bills. My point is that what's changed to me, what's interesting about social media is the way that. It's a naff word, but things become viral. And what do I find interesting about viral is where content that you weren't interested in or you weren't aware of is now being pushed to you in a way that would never have happened 20 years ago when all content was delivered by the BBC. Now people put a blog up or whatever, and suddenly it's in someone's feed, and this is interesting. It is raising awareness of LARP and raising interest in a way that was never possible 20 years ago. Social
media is obviously it's a complete mixed blessing, right? There was a lot of bad side social media, right? But one thing it does do is if you go LARPing, and it's obvious that you are joining LARP groups, there might be other people that are interested in that. You're going to know like-minded people to you, hopefully, if you had a fun life, right? And you've met lots of people who do share similar values. So it does kind of, like anything on a social media, it does mushroom cloud a little bit, and make all these new connections. The Facebook groups are a wonderful source of like you can just fire off a piece of information and get information back very quickly. You can get support from players if you're nervous about something. Also, it gives a lot more like a sense of group, right? Like it's it's much better at the LARP. Like the idea of like, because I feel completely Navarre now. Like I'm part of that nation. That it runs through my blood when I'm at the event now. You know, I'm proud of my nation. You know.
Yeah. That's cool.
And it's and you get that sense. Actually, let's talk about this tribal thing, because I found that Navarre is something I haven't played any other nations, so I don't know what it's like. But Navarre has a deep tribal game that is like it gets you. And when it gets you, it's so fast and so strong. You're part of it, you know. Like like the standing, just to get people kind of involved a little bit and know like a sit rep on what's going on in the world. But song and story time is like it's like part of that like primitive monkey part of our brains where you sit down and you sing together around the fire. And then by the morning, a magical transformation has happened. You're suddenly this Navarre soldier who will. You know, if you're in a bar and you hear someone talking crap about Navarre in the corner, you'll draw swords, you know? It's that sort of attitude. Is that deliberate or...?
Yes. It is. I think... I mean, first of all, is it deliberate? Well, I think it's a part of human nature. We are tribal by design. And there was an element of the game that is absolutely built around those tribal instincts. You know, the game is... Without trying to blow our own trumpet too much, you know, we spent 3 years creating Empire and drawing on an accumulated bank of experience of 20, 30, 40, 50 years running LARP games. You know, I'd been doing it myself professionally 6, 7, 8, 9 years by that stage. The game is very, very carefully designed. And one of the starting points of the game is to say that you've got all these nations together in an empire. But we want points of conflict. We want conflict. We want people to be antagonistic towards it. We don't just want everyone to agree on everything, because then there will be no drama. You know, imagine watching an episode of Coronation Street and nobody falls out with anybody at any point in the show about anything at all.
That's the Teletubbies.
The Teletubbies, right? That's right. Yeah, no, and nobody over the age of 6 watches the Teletubbies. So, you know, we knew we needed drama. And where does that start off? It starts off with, well, your tribe has annoyed my tribe, and now we're really mad at your tribe, and we're gonna do bad things to your tribe. That, you know, we designed it to say that we want those instincts. We want them. We want to draw on them for the conflict of the game.
So there's a anecdote from the shooting of the Planet of the Apes way back in the 70s or whatever. So all the extras had to get all these fake prosthetics on for their different types of chimpanzee or monkey, whatever they were. And they'd start the day and they'd do the filming and they'd come for lunch. At the lunchtime, everyone would sit in their type of monkey group.
Right.
Right? So it's like a purely like, you just got assigned that at the start of the day. There wasn't like a selection process. But by lunchtime, everyone sits with their monkey homeboys and not with the chimpanzees or the orangutans, you know? It's kind of like it's an odd thing, you know?
I feel confident that if we blew a whistle at 12 o'clock and said, right, everyone, stop role playing, it's dinner time, and there was just 100 to 250 tables, you know,
You'd sit in your nations.
You'd sit with your nations.
Totally.
I mean, some people would move around.
Like, as soon as you said it, I was like, well, I would definitely sit with my nation. There wouldn't even be a second thought for me. It would be a really natural process to be like, where is everyone that I know coming along and people are in the same marks as me? Yeah.
It's tribal, and it's meant to.
Yeah, it's... The tribal thing's like a weird thing to... Like, would you ever worry about two nations falling out so badly that it comes to... I'm not talking like a skirmish, I'm talking something bigger, you know? Like,
full on civil war in the middle of the field? It could happen.
Yeah, it could happen.
Yeah. I got into a weird little thing with Dawn at my last event that kind of escalated a bit, and I was part of it. Like, I certainly didn't help the situation, but it kind of got crazy, and there was Navarre guys watching over me in this weird, like, diplomatic moment where it was like, man, we're in the middle of the high street, like, and it's about to be the Verona and Shakespeare, you know.
It would be fun to watch the magistrates arrest all those people.
Yeah, just like, you know, well, he stabbed me and you stabbed me, and well, he did this first, yeah, but I wasn't even involved and you stabbed me, so, yeah.
We do think we. I mean, ironically, I think we spent a lot of time during that design period thinking about it and how we'd handle it and how we'd work with it and how we'd roll with it and how we would pick the pieces up afterwards. It hasn't happened yet.
No, but I've heard three different nations definitely. I've heard like significant groups of high position players within those nations talking about trying to secede from the empire.
I can imagine. I can really imagine, like, especially when times are strained or nations strong, right? Like, if a nation feels like they don't need the empire to defend their borders, well, why do I need the? All we're doing is paying into.
I don't think I've seen it when a nation's strong. I've certainly seen it when a nation is down.
Yeah.
Because when a nation is down, they start to feel things like, oh, the empire isn't supporting us.
What's going on with Eurozone right now? Are they on the chopping block?
Bad
What's going on
times
with
being
it?
Eurozone. They're not on the chopping block. They've retaken Spiral. Everything's great.
I mean,
If you live in Morrow or Zenith, it's fine.
Like, can a nation die? Is that?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Good luck, everyone.
Now we've had discussions about it. Lengthy discussions.
Yeah, they're not close to dying.
No.
They would need to lose Redoubt and Spiral as well as the rest of Morrow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, things aren't good for them. But if you look at the game when the Empire started, there was plenty of territories that had been taken off them by the barbarians.
Yeah.
And yes, the Druge have marched down and have come in through the side door, as it were.
Oh man, the Orc nations. Like, I love RPing the Orcs, right? Like, the first ones that we did were... also, I want to hear your pronunciation on this stuff. Jotun? Jotun.
That's my pronunciation.
That's Jotun, okay?
I use Yotun.
Yotun. Well, you heard it here, folks. There's no answer to that riddle.
Sure, Andy would tell you where he hears.
Oh, you get all the way to the end of the rabbit hole, and you pull back the curtain, and it's just a man with a speaker saying all this stuff. You're like, God damn it, what's the answer?
Yeah. There isn't one. Either pronunciation is fine.
Okay, fine. That's actually good though.
I think we all use Druge rather than Drudge.
Yeah.
It's not.
I've only ever heard
Druge.
Druge.
Druge,
yeah.
Definitely.
I like RPing the different, like the Jotun. Like, I didn't really, like, again, these are all aspects that I only really understand when I'm playing them. You know what I mean? Like, I get told stuff and I'm like, okay. But when you start to have those, I don't know, like, you just become part of that. You know what I mean? Like, it's hard. I don't know how to describe it, but we did a hold in a fort, like, at E3. And we were Jotun, but we were RPing that. You know what I mean? Like, we were holding professional soldiers who were not, like, and we were doing that. And then I played the Druge last time, and we were just bastards. You know what I mean? Like, the worst.
They're pretty terrible, aren't they?
Yeah, but it was fun to be like, just to kind of get into that skin and then kind of let yourself kind of just flow into it and have a great time with it. You know, like. I can only imagine how terrifying that would be to look back. Like, I'm not a big guy, but wearing an orc mask and yelling loads of crap, like, I bet that's horrible to face.
The three barbarian nations that they're currently at war with are certainly very definitive in feel.
Mm-hmm.
The Druge are basically terrible people. Mm-hmm. The Yotun are very bold and honourable, and the Grendel are just the worst.
Just awful.
I don't think I've fought the Grendel. I might have done.
I love the Grendel. They're so much fun.
I haven't been. Who are the? So what are the people who they have like zombies? What are they called?
The Thule.
The Thule.
The Thule in the north. Yeah.
Yeah, they're the. I took those guys on and at one of the big battles, and the RP coming from them, like, screaming as they charge towards you. It was the Destroyer of Hope or whatever, the Eater of Hope, that battle.
That wouldn't have been the...
There wasn't zombies, sorry. They were like possessed people or whatever.
Yeah, that was the Druge.
That
was the Grendel? Eater of Hope?
Was that?
Yeah, Eater of Hope. That was not one of the barbarian tribes.
Right, that was just an evil beastie that was in the spiral or whatever.
Something that was trying to raise an army of its own down in Spiral.
That was awesome.
That was an independent evil entity. That
I loved it. It was so great. It was...
that was a
really, really fun battle. Like, I got all sorts of kicks out of that one. But yeah, like I think that's one of the fun things about these monstering battles, just the concept of having a monstering battle. Like for me, I love doing it on the Saturday because I can like warm up to the idea and just have a fun battle and not worry about it too much. But that has a knock-on effect to me being way less uptight when I'm doing my own battles on a Sunday, because I'm like, just have fun with it. You know what I mean? Like you don't need to. If I die, it's bad, but like you don't want to live. Like I don't want to live my normal life as a sheep, right? Why would I possibly want to do that in RP, right? I can even take that to a much larger level and see how far I can push with it, you know?
The phrase I always use, you know, if you die in live role playing, you get another character.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
they're free.
Yeah.
It's like it's good to be attached. It's good to care about your character, and one of the things that's really nice about Empire is that people are really attached, and they make really deep, meaningful choices. They'll look at something and go, that's just not worth the risk. We're just not going to do it. Too many people will die. And you know, and that's not always an attitude you see in live role playing, because at the end of the day it's just a game, and some people are like, well, we've come here for a fight, so we're just going to go anyway. And in Empire, people are, you know, really immersed. But at the end of the day, at some point, sometime, your moment will come and you'll die and it'll be over, and it's like, just pop down to God.
Yeah, I was way more worried. I was way more worried. For some reason, it doesn't even make sense why I was worried, really, because my character was so generic. You know what I mean? Like, at least for the first couple of things, there wasn't that much going on with my character. I was just going to Empire and I was more like a passive observer a lot of the time. But now I'm like, I've got a really strong base for who my character is, and I really enjoy playing my character, and I'm curious about what's going to happen with him, and he's got some ideas. But now I've kind of got this second character that's back in the back of my mind, right? And he's just sitting there, and he's like... And he's getting like, he started off as a skeleton and now he's getting like muscles and skin and a smile and a face, and it's like, oh my god, like this guy's already forming, you know, in the back of my mind of something that I want to be next, you know?
The thing I always say, there's a couple of things. I mean, one is your character is a vehicle to enjoy the event. Mm-hmm. It is literally a vehicle. Drive it like you borrowed it. You know, if you crash and burn and go into the ditch and there's tires rolling across you will have an amazing time. Mm-hmm. If you proceed carefully down the road at 10 mile an hour, making sure not to, you know, to indicate when you turn left, you'll not have such an amazing time. You know,
Well, my friend Ian said, like, really, he mentioned that he was saying about even your mistakes at Empire can often be some of the best things that will happen to you. Yeah. And it's a really shrewd thing to say, in my opinion, because it's come true so many times for me. In fact, like the most times that I've messed up as my character has taught me more about my character than any execution I've done, any battle cry I've done and charged in. It's much more subtle than that, especially when I've like goofed up to like members of my own nation that I wanted to put a good impression to, or my egregore. I was like, you know, my first event I kind of just used the egregore like an information point, right? Barely IC, like I was more like just clicking through wiki links rather than, you know, actually.
I bet they loved you.
I just terrible, like the worst player. And but so then after that, I was like, man, I want to step up my game. I want to do it for my egregore. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like I want to be a good Navarre and help out other Navarre. You know, so yeah.
The point is that it doesn't punish those kind of mistakes. In fact, in many ways, it rewards them. If something goes terribly, terribly wrong, it will produce a moment of epic drama, and you will be right in the middle of it. Yeah. And then at the end of it, it won't matter because it's a game. Mm-hmm. So just, you know, live for the moment. Really.
Well, I like how, as a friend of mine, I met him at last event, and we get on quite well now. We're friends on Facebook. We're chatting along. But his entire game is serving bar.
Right.
That's it. That's why he goes to Empire.
Yep.
And there's this like huge game that you guys have all come up with all these rules and like this world building, all this lore. But what he loves doing is going out for a few drinks and then serving bar and RPing with people that come to his bar. And I love the simplicity of that. Like, you know, like some people will go there and they're probably listening to this right now thinking about their aspirations to become the most powerful person in their nation, you know. And then there's the person next to them is just like, wow, I can't wait to try out that plum mead when I get there next time, you know.
The thing I love about, the thing that I think is, you know, if you're not used to live role playing at a festival, at a big game, people who are coming into live role playing, are coming from other role playing sources, will often have kind of high fantasy tropes. They'll have in their mind, I am going to be Conan the Barbarian, I'm going to be the mighty warrior, I'm going to be X, I'm going to be Y. And you have these very heroic, very adventure-based archetypes in your head.
Mm-hmm.
And Empire isn't about adventures. Empire is a political world. It's a social world. It's an economic world. But it's a world that people are living in and existing in. And yes, you will have adventures, but you will, whereas if Conan the Barbarian goes from one adventure to another, you're going to have one adventure for 30 minutes in the weekend. The rest of the time, you're going to be in that world, living in it, being the person you are. And some people's amazing weekend is, I'm going to go there and I'm going to be the barkeep of the Navarre bar.
When I first
went,
I said to the guys I was going with, like, I want 2 moments of immersion. That's all I wanted, right?
Yeah.
I'll pay my £80 or whatever it was at the time, and I'll go there and I just want 2 of those. And it was E1, so it was brutal,
Yeah,
right?
it was
Like
brutal.
it was rain for people that don't know, but very heavily. But they happened, and I wasn't aware they were happening at the time. You know what I mean? Like they were just, I was in that moment, and away it went. And it was only afterwards I was like, man, that was it. Like when I was worried about what RP is, I was already doing it by the time it actually come round, So, and that RP muscle seems to be a lot easier for me to kind of do now after 3 events than it was at E1. Like E1, we call it RPM. You have to get your RPMs up, and then you can get into the LARP zone. You know what I mean? Like
yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, for me, that the click moment, the moment that I know I'm in, is the moment I stop thinking, what would my character do, and I just think, what will I do? The moment I stop thinking about my character and start thinking as my character is the moment for me that immersion happens, and I'm now just that person being, whoever that person is, and it's only, but you're right, it's only afterwards that you think, oh, that was it. You're not aware of it when it happens, but yeah, it's, and it does. I know what you mean. You first time you role play, you don't. It's not as easy to find that moment. But
yeah, but it's like I do a lot of like yoga and things like that. So I really like the whole mental muscle stuff and thinking about that. And I find a lot of that stuff though. It's an RP. I put this in that same camp was you need to exercise that muscle. Like you need to. It's something that you need to build confidence with and be able to just do. And I think the more you do it, the easier it gets. Basically, is the simple way of what I'm saying.
Yeah, although I think you've got to be careful. I am a cynic about experience. I think it's overrated. Having sat there going, oh yes, I've got 16 years experience of blah. I do think experience is overrated. A phrase I often use is it's a straitjacket for the mind. It teaches you what isn't possible as much as it teaches you what is possible. And I think people learn limitations.
Yeah, maybe it's because I'm on that. I'm like, I'm here right now, right? Yeah. Like I'm nowhere near this has become like regular for me. Like this doesn't. It still feels. Well, I don't know if it'll ever end, but I still have a boyish excitement on that Friday before I head down to LARP. Like I'm really excited about what's going to be happening for that weekend. But then again, even if it did ever get to the point where I really felt humdrum about it or I was going through the motions. But then again, I'm saying that, but even while I'm saying it, I'm going, well, some people might just do it for the social aspects,
Yeah.
And I completely see how that could happen.
Now, of course, I am the long beard who is telling other people what they can and can't do in the hobby.
He's completely clean shaven, by the way.
Yeah, but I remember when I started out running events for the first time, there was a whole slew of people queuing up to tell me that it couldn't be done. Everything I was doing or about to do or planning to do, there'd be people going, no, you can't do that. I've been running LARP for X years, you can't do that. That won't work. That can't be done. That isn't possible. And to me, live role-playing is fundamentally about trying to do things that aren't possible. That's the point of it. It's literally where, it's half imagination. It's like the worlds we live in have dragons and wizards and people fly. So when people go, oh, you can't do that, that can't be done, what they're really saying is, I tried and I couldn't make it work.
Well, I didn't even try.
I didn't even try.
Because I hear that, yeah, I agree with what you're saying totally. The idea of like closing off doors for experience is something I haven't really thought about, but I'm looking at my own. I go, oh yeah, actually maybe I have done that with a couple of aspects.
We all do it, but also I think if you're brand new to, that's talking very much from the organising point of view. If you're new to live role playing as a player, the classic thing you see all the time is like, how do you do it? I wouldn't know how to start, and there's an assumption that people go, well, people must have been doing it for years. They must be really good at live role playing, and there is a certain degree of skill, without a shadow of a doubt. But I have a young daughter. You know, she's been live role playing since she was 5 years old. Not at events. She just plays shopkeeper at home, or she plays cowboys and Indians, or she plays. You know, human beings are actually born being able to live role play.
Yeah.
We learn, and actually we learn to stop live role playing.
Well,
society goes, put those children's games away. Stop doing that. You can't do that anymore.
Yeah, I felt that when I went to E1 was a lot of my own hang-ups were social, like societal hang-ups. They weren't even my own. They were stuff that had been taught to me and I responded in turn. It took me a while to get past that. Now when I go to an event, I'm like, none of that exists anymore. There's none of the initial hang-ups. But it's hard to say because it all kind of comes very quickly. It's like a bell curve of how comfortable I felt there from nothing to knowing a few people, even just passing people and smiling that you know that you've had interactions with makes you just feel more safe and more comfortable in that tribe, right? Yeah.
People will pick it up at different rates, but as you say, it's a very steep curve in the sense that if you were looking at something that takes a lot of skill, learned skill, like windsurfing or something like that, you would go week after week after week after week and get better slowly. You know, I tried to windsurf for years. I just fell off the board. You know, you're learning a really complex, challenging physical skill that will take years to get better at. Live role playing, you'll pick up pretty darn quickly. It will just happen, and you know, by the end of the weekend, you'll be like, what was I worried about? That wasn't actually difficult, because the skills required are speaking, walking around, you know, holding things, and there's no challenging, you know. It's not
just to slightly cut in from the less instantly able to do all of those tasks. It can be hard, just walking around and talking to people. From those who are not instantly crazily extrovert like yourself.
This is what I'm aware of when I'm playing now is because I'm quite an overzealous person anyway, right? Like I'm one of those, what's it called? Like my friend described me as chaotic good, right? Like I'm a force of good, but a lot of people might be like, oh snap, you know, I swear a lot. So when I'm out on the field and I'm doing something that gets in that LARP, you know, you're really involved in it. Like it's easy to forget that some people might be like, oh shit, you know, by that.
Yes.
I was at a it was monstering on the Saturday, and I came back and we were Druge, and there were the slaves who were doing the physicking stuff. Yeah. And I was like, get the fuck on with it, you know, what are you doing? I was doing all this stuff, and the girl kind of looked like a little worried for a second. I was like, oh, I'm really sorry if I'm yelling so much. And she was like, no, I'm RPing being scared. And I was like, oh man, I'm an idiot for even dropping it. But it was like that moment where I was like, am I being overly zealous here? But in fact, like, you're surrounded by people that are really up for it, you know.
You're not wrong that you need confidence.
Yes. Confidence is a big gainer. I mean, there's a lot for you if you don't instantly have confidence. I'm not the confident person that Matt is, but I've still been doing it for a long time.
Look, my point is though, you'll see people who have been role playing 5 hours, and you just be like, they're amazing. Yeah. And I've seen people who've been role playing 20 years, and you're like, it'd be nice if they could get a bit more in character. Yeah. Yeah. So you know, it's actually.
But it feels like again this goes back to the whole. There are many ways to play Empire.
Yep.
Right. Like you can be antisocial and kind of a bit of it. You may not get access to all aspects of the game, but you can still get along and play it and enjoy your aspect of it. You know,
there's a chunk of Empire that is about carving out a niche for yourself. If you can carve out a niche yourself, which is hard, there are a lot of people playing the game, and almost anything you can think of, you'll probably find there's someone already doing it from doing it somewhere. But if you can carve out as like, this is my area, me and my 2 friends, and we're going to people who cast this ritual that people want, and we're going to make sure that happens all the time. We're going to be known for doing it. And the more people you have with you, the easier that gets to carve out that chunk. The ritual that you cast can now be this fort ritual that the generals want, so the generals will come to you, and so on and so forth.
Well, we have.
But you can carve out that area and sort of, even if you're only interacting with a small part and you were saying that is my bit, if you can make that bit your bit.
Yeah. The a couple of our neighbours have kind of specific, like they have a coven, is that what they call it?
Yeah,
like
to cast rituals.
and
together.
like, but we're friendly with them, right? And we have no magic users in our group whatsoever, right?
Right,
We're all pretty much physics archers, warrior types, you know, the most generic type people you can get. But talking to them, we get on really well with them. So there's a kind of trade in social trade as well as money and resources and all these other wonderful things that kind of happens from that game. To be able to feel useful is good. Like that's something really good. Like I've been trying to step up on the kind of military game. I don't know how interested I am about the units, and everyone talks about what's going to happen, and then you go and do that thing. But I really enjoy like being a sergeant in a unit and helping out a commander to make everything run correctly and yelling loudly so everyone at the back of the room can hear you, the back of the field can hear you. You know, it's So I don't know. God, are you disappointed that I'm only really that's all I'm doing? Like
No, not at all. No, quite the opposite. As Graeme says, I one of the things I often try to tell people, particularly if they're getting a bigger group together, is don't cover all the bases.
Yeah.
You know, you will have a less interesting game if every person in your group is able to do. You know, if all the things you're going to want can be done by the people in your group, you've got no reason to go and talk to anybody.
Yeah, we had
be great at one thing and be useless at everything else.
Yeah,
and then you have to go and talk to people.
The guy who's joining our group and is going to be there at E1 next year. He was like, "Oh, what do you guys need as part of the group?" And blah blah blah. We were talking about it, and all of us were just like, you know, just make your guy.
Yeah.
If you don't like it, then you can delete it and start again. You know, so you don't feel at all attached to that. You're going to go and experience something you've never experienced before, and you're going to learn while you're doing it. And it's, you know, just let the dice roll a little bit, you know, and kind of see what pops out. What do you guys? Okay, let's talk about character creation. What do you guys do when you're sitting down and you're going, all right, I'm gonna go and come up with a new character? Is that something that you're? What's the process for that with you guys?
You mean when we're going to someone else's event?
Yeah. Do you miss that? Do you miss not being able to play your own game?
One of the great ironies and the curses of role playing, live role playing but role playing in general, is that everybody runs the game they'd want to play. You know, because you run the thing that in your head is the best game ever. Nobody runs the thing that is the second best game ever.
Mm-hmm.
You run in your head the game that is the best game you can possibly imagine. So everybody is running the game they really want to play. I mean, I would really want to play Empire. I would just love it.
It is great, by the way. It's really
good.
fun.
I'm glad to hear that. But you can't play your own game. It doesn't work. So yes, I do go to other games.
Hold on. If you were going to create a Empire player, who would it be? Graeme, did you have one?
I'm a stat guy.
So you don't...
Unashamedly, I am a stat guy. So I will... obviously, I've never built an Empire character, but when I was building stuff for other games or various other things, I would basically, if I were to translate that into Empire, I would have picked a nation, then looked at the stats for the rules. I would have picked something that I found interesting.
Yeah.
It would generally be relatively powerful. I am that guy. But it would be something interesting.
Like full-on battle mage or something.
You'd find the thing you thought was.
I'd find the thing that I thought was good and that was powerful, and I would probably take it to its logical extent.
Yeah. Like you're a min-maxer on a computer game.
I am something of a min-maxer. I am the stat guy, as it were. And then I would, from that shell, I would then build a character that fits that shell. And I've done that, and sometimes you do that and you sort of go, I literally can't find a character that fits these stats, and then you discard it and you start again. That character, that method of character creation gets a lot of stick for just being a min-maxer, but I find there's a lot of value to it in sort of like building a character who wants to be useful, building a character who is good at what they do, and fits a certain style of play, particularly when you're talking about active skills, whether it's ritual casting or whether it's combat skills, that is good at what they do.
Yeah.
and then building a character around that
Yeah.
framework.
I've found mine's purely combat. That's all it is. Like fortitude, cleave, stay with me, extra hero point. You know what I mean? Like I'm just built for fighting at this stage.
See
you know?
that? Sorry, that stat build doesn't sound like a pure combat build to me.
Well, how's that?
Well, for starters, you've taken stay with me. So you've already gone into what I would class as a tertiary healer.
Yeah. Well.
So you are. As you're not pure frontline fighter, you
Well,
are
no, it's more
already into a little bit of support for those near
It's
you.
more like going back to that Navarre thing, though. Like it's on a practical level, right? Like it's if you've got a guy down, well, he can either lay there or you can get him up, and he can be another person that's going to make it better for you to survive. That's kind of, I don't know. That's how I kind of viewed that as a thing.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not necessarily about bashing the enemy. It's about being an excellent combatant, you know. So I don't know. You don't get to miss the thing. What do you reckon you're gonna do as a character then?
What would I play if I was playing Empire? I think I would get a bunch of mates together and say, let's go and play a High Guard group and see if we can get the Imperial Orcs thrown out of the Empire. It's clearly a mistake. Let's see if we can't get that fixed. That would be a cool character concept.
Then after you've been executed.
Then after we've all
What have you
died.
done throwing petrol over everything?
Yeah. What would I do next? I don't know. That's just the first idea that comes to me.
High
off the top
Guard
of my head.
are a nation that I have had these weird, like, I know nothing about High Guard, but every time I've bumped into them or had anything to do with them, they've been the coolest. And like when people talk about them, they're kind of like friends to Navarre, and we're helping them out with some stuff. And yeah, I like High Guard a lot. They're maybe E1. They're people I like to kind of get to know a bit more and kind of find out what they're
They're
about.
one of my favourite nations, but I just think that would be an amazing thing to play.
Mhm.
Just sitting down and having quiet meetings in your highborn tent with other groups and trying to get them on board and laying plans to try and bring another nation down.
God, I like the Orcs, and you're making me interested in doing it. So
You see how cool this is. Join now. I'm starting a new group.
there's
It'd
definitely
be
a little
great.
evil part of me that like that it's definitely lurking back there, and I'm like an overly like I'm a nice character generally. I can be a bit like what's the word for it, like, you know, I want to win and blah blah blah, but at the same time it's always for the good of the nation and the empire. To like we were talking about like fake news and the idea of how powerful that could be at Empire.
Yeah.
Like just spreading mistruths or speaking loudly in the wrong places could send wildfire through a camp. It would be.
I think we've seen it.
Yes.
I'm sure it happens.
We've definitely had something come back to us, and from what we heard, we'd gotten worried that maybe the information had gone out wrong, and a little bit of digging, we discovered that no, the information didn't go out wrong. The people who got the information buried it,
changed it
to what they preferred.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
There's no internet. There's no nothing like that.
No.
So if only 4 people go on this skirmish and find out this piece of information,
Mm-hmm.
who's to say? Who's to challenge them if they decide to lock arms and say nope?
No.
This is what we found out.
Or a 4-man skirmish, you could murder someone, leave them in the field, and be like, he didn't make it. You know,
He didn't make it.
Yeah, that's a little bit more risky. You can summon the dead in our game.
Yeah. So when you die, the militia can talk to the dead. Is that right?
Yeah.
There's a ritual, Whispers Through the Black Gate, which allows you to...
So you don't need the corpse.
No. If you've got the corpse and are within a certain amount of time, I think it's 10 minutes?
Yeah.
5 minutes? 5 or 10 minutes. Then Speak with Dead is a simple spell that you can cast to be able to talk to a corpse. But, after a longer period of time, you can summon them at dusk at the Regio using Whispers Through the Black Gate.
That's so cool.
So,
You call a
if you
spirit back
are
from the
going
dead.
to murder someone,
Do it carefully.
be very careful that you don't get caught.
Hey, I would never.
Even by the
I would
victim.
never, ever
Never cast
murder
aspersions on
anyone. It does make you kind of think about it, though. If I was going to murder
If I
someone,
was.
how would I? do it?
Crucially, I would certainly want a situation where if you're going to murder someone, I want you to murder them. I don't want you murdering someone that you meet in a back alley on your way to the toilets.
Yeah.
I'm much happier with a situation where the person that you murder is your political enemy who you've been frantically working against for ages, and things have just finally reached a boiling point where only murder will solve the situation.
It's the one thing I thought about was like just a simple costume change or a face tattoo, or do you know what I'm saying? There's like when you start thinking about, because I've never thought about murdering anyone, right? Like but
Real starting place, put a disguise on. That's starting point number one.
I would go right to the night ritual and make myself look like a Cambion with giant horns if I were going to do that.
That's really good, because that's all they would remember, right? If it was dark. Also, the idea of that. Is it Entangle, or which was the one that freezes people? Paralyze. You just do that from behind and then have your wicked way with them.
Doesn't stop them screaming.
Does not stop them screaming.
Yeah, but what does, right?
Yeah, no.
Execute. Execute is what stops them screaming. Nothing until that
silence.
point will stop them screaming.
Yeah,
Down and bleeding to death, still screaming. Paralyzed, still screaming.
I haven't come into. See, I don't play much of a political game, right? So I have no. I'm fairly passive in the world. Like, if you want to come and mess with me, then there's that. But beyond that, you've got no one's got any business in doing that. I'm also broke, so I'm not even worth mugging.
Yeah,
So
no. I mean, this is 5 years ago now, but hey, one of the first deaths I remember hearing about was, I think it was the Spring Archmage.
Spring Archmage, yeah.
Calendar? I can't remember the name.
I think he's called Calendar. Was called Calendar. He's dead now.
He's dead now. I remember hearing about that death, I think from the dead player at the time. And if I remember it right, I may be doing this a disservice, but they were put down late at night, and they put them down, didn't loot their body, and to be clear, this is the Spring Archmage and had the belt, the chain, and the staff on them. Mm-hmm. 3 extremely powerful magic items that you literally cannot make in our game. The only way to get them is to be Spring Archmage. Right. Had all those on, body possessions were not looted, and if I remember right, they put a note in their mouth saying why they'd done it. It was a very definite political hit. This was not a mugging, and that struck me as very interesting for the game.
It's massively. I respect, like, immediately that it sends a message, right? Like, it's the mafiosi. We're not here for your loot. We're here to kill you, and that's it. You know, like
this is a political murder.
Yeah.
I think again, this is from memory from a few years ago, and the player of it is probably saying that's not the case at this point. But hey ho, if I remember right, it happened very close to timeout. Mm-hmm. And I think they even went back and played their body from 10 a.m. the next morning to get found, which
so
worked
to get looted.
Well, no,
so
that their friends,
so they can find them.
Their friends, because they'd been murdered very close to their camp, if I remember right, and but of course it's so dark and past 1 a.m. It's sort of like,
lay there
I don't really want to fizz rep my body there, but I do want to go back there at 10 in the morning so that the people getting up at time in will find my corpse.
Yeah, I feel like for me, I might want to get in like the throne guard maybe, just to kind of get myself, because one of the things I'm worried about is getting bogged down in meetings and things like that, right? Like, I have enough of that in my job. I don't particularly. Maybe I'll be surprised if I went, but that's not something where I am right now, right? Yeah. But just the idea of rocking up somewhere for being like 2 hours, it might be a bit boring, but there might be some action. So keep an eye on the swivel. That sounds pretty good to me, you know. So.
One of the very first characters I played in a big LARP game was a bodyguard. Mm-hmm. And I had a whale of a time.
I think that's what I'll say it. I mean, sure, we sell everything that we're doing with our characters on the LARP. It's probably a huge mistake, but never mind. You know, I like the idea of running a bodyguard service. Like, that seems like something interesting to me, especially since I was hanging around with a bunch of traders, and they were just like dropping money on the table and resources and doing all this stuff. Yeah. I was just like, man, like, someone should be murdering these people. They're walking around with bags of cash by themselves in the dark at night, and they seem to be not worried about it. Like, a lesser man than myself might look at them and go, wow, that certainly does look tempting, you know? Yeah, cool. Right, we've been talking for well over an hour here, guys. We should probably wrap it up. But, thank you so much for doing it. Really appreciate it.
It's been great.
Maybe do another one at some point if you're up for it.
Yeah. If people are interested in this,
Well, I didn't ask for questions this time because I wanted to do like a secret surprise for people that are in between, because obviously we're in the long dark now between events, so something a little bit of a nugget just to get people through those dark winter months. But next time maybe take some questions and then
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
like I said, thank you so much. It's been a really good time. So thank
Yeah,
you.
fantastic. Thank you.
Time for going.
It's a bit cold in here.
Oh, it's not lighting. This is terrible. Very damp in here. What is... Yeah, it's not lighting. Oh, hello. Yeah, it's work. I like the fire. Very nice. Very toasty.
Don't think it's enjoying the smoke too much.
Oh, no. What is going on? This is kind of... Oh, you can feel it retching. Lift the anchor, man. We'll get out of here in a jiffy.
Hold tight, this is gonna get rough. Looks like we live to fight another day.
You did not believe old Sinmi. There is definitely Salmagrom. You've been inside now. You know the feel.
Looks like the talisman doesn't just point out treasure. Well, hopefully we'll be having another adventure soon. So until next time, ta-ta!